everybody. It's Angie Rupert, founder of Rupert Law Group. We handle only E2 and E1 visas. And so no matter what treaty country you're from or where you want to be, we can help. Today I want to talk about the difference between the two visas that we handle. Why would I ever get an E2 visa, or why would I ever get an E1 visa? What would be a good case for both, right? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before we get started, please like or subscribe, and of course share this with a friend if you feel like it's useful, and we hope that you do. So to begin, let's talk a little bit about the E2 visa, shall we? Now you will see that there are numerous videos on this channel about the E2 visa, the requirements, different types of businesses, different countries, blah, blah, blah. So how do we put the E2 visa in a nutshell, right, in order to compare it to the E1 visa? So for the E2 visa, think about it like this. An E2 visa applicant wants to buy or start a business in the U.S. That's it. So there are a variety of requirements that go into that we need to show, but that's the baseline. What about with an E1 visa? What would be a typical situation for an E1 visa? An E1 visa says, I have a company, usually in my home country, but maybe in the US, that trades with the other, right? I'm Italian. I have an Italian company. I have tons of US clients. Or, this is actually a real case that we had, I am a Turkish citizen. I have a US entity that operates in the US, and we import tons of stuff from Turkey, okay? Those are two excellent situations where maybe you want an E1 visa. So the E1 visa says, I have a company, it trades between my home country in the US primarily, and I have evidence of that past and ongoing trade. So there you go. Do you want, one, a business that you're going to be operating in the US, or two, you already have a business that trades with the US, okay? E2 says I want a new or existing business in the US. E1 says I already have a business, usually in my home country, that trades with the US. And I have proof that we've been trading for at least a year, and we have an ongoing and continuous trade. Future sales or past trade, right? Those are generally what you're looking for an E2 or an E1 visa. So when does this come up? First of all, know that E1 visas are much rarer than E2 visas. A lot of that's just because people don't know that they exist. There's something like 7,000 E1 visas per year in the entire world. A lot of those are Mexico and Canada, as you may imagine. There are some others as well. Also note that some countries that allow for E2s do not allow for E1s, and vice versa. So if you're thinking about one of them, just make sure that you fit into both or either, and you know kind of where your passport fits, okay? So that's number one. Number two is think about, what do you want to do? You want to run a business in the US, or do you want to continue to run the business that's already trading with the US, okay? That's important because that will guide us as to which one you might qualify for. Now, some of the basics are the same, which is once you get this E2 visa or E1 visa, your spouse can get an E1 or E2 spouse and is allowed to work wherever he or she wants, or not work at all. Your kids are allowed to go to school until the day they turn 21. Kids are never allowed to work on an E2 or an E1 visa. But those are just a few things to consider. So when you're thinking about the E2 or E1, think about, do I have a company that trades with the US and I have a history of that continuous and ongoing trade? Or am I interested in starting or buying a business in the US and just operating that? That's going to be the key to let you know which visa might be a better fit for you. Now, I do get some people who say, hey, I have this business, it trades a lot, it imports and exports, or I want to start a new US entity that imports and exports. If it's a new entity, the E1's not going to work because we have to have a history of trade. If it's a company that's located in another country, not your home country, and not the US, but another country that does a lot of trading with the US, that's probably starting a new subsidiary or something in the US as an E2, because the trade has to be between your home country and the United States, okay? So for more information on the E2 or E1, we do have videos that go into the requirements, that kind of thing. So please see those. And of course, if you want to talk a little bit more to discover if you're an E1 or E2 visa, please reach out anytime. We'd love to speak with you about your E2 or E1 visa.